have no idea how much my heart is filled with joy to see this many people at Mass 2018. So may Allah bless you, all of you, each one of you, for being here, because this is actually one of the most important steps you can do for your family, is to be with the community. This is when you are going to feel that you're not alone. Okay, there are others like you, and we all have the same struggles and the same challenges, and this is, at the end of the convention, you leave feeling empowered and feeling supported, inshallah, bismillah. So, jazakum Allah khair. So lovely to see all of you, alhamdulillah. الحمد لله كما ينبغي لجلال وجهه وعظيم سلطانه والصلاة والسلام على أطيب المرسلين محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. As you all know, I'm a marriage and family therapist, which means I actually deal with a lot of the family issues in the community. So I want to begin with putting things in context. People actually a lot of times ask me, so what are the problems that come to your office? What do you see in your office? So I want to begin by saying, really please listen carefully to this. Most of the problems that come to my office are really very benign problems. And they are usually just a disruption in the relationships, whether between husband and wife or parents and children. So most of the family issues are really disruptions in relationships. And this is actually good. Not good because we want to have disruptions, just good because it's simple to actually repair. Because it really means that we can do something about it and we can prevent it also from happening. Now we come to the minority of issues that I see in my office, and they're not, let's say, benign. They are big, and usually our community talks most about these minority issues. So I will, if I were to say what are the main issues in this minority category, okay, that I see in my office and I have been seeing recently, okay, over, you know, I've been inshallah, I've been practicing, alhamdulillah, now for 11 years. So, so I would say these big issues that the whole community really freaks out about are, one is LGBTQ issues, which alhamdulillah, Sheikh Suhail covered for you right now. And he covered it, alhamdulillah, very nice. And the main reason why is because we didn't know even how to handle it, and we dismissed it as an issue anyway. Now, so that's number one. Number two is an increase and uptake in porn addictions, and all sorts of addictions. So not only porn and drug addiction, you know, within, you know, especially our young people. So LGBTQ issues, addictions in general, which includes porn and, you know, drugs and so on. Now we come to the third issue. And that's the one that actually touches my heart, and it breaks my heart, and it saddens my heart the most. And in general, I'm just going to call it a disconnection with Islam. And the disconnection with Islam, I'm going to divide it into two categories. Okay? So the first category of disconnection with Islam is basically our youth who identify as Muslims. They are not saying they're not Muslims. They are Muslims. They say we're Muslim. They are Muslims. But they don't necessarily choose to live according to, the rules or the lifestyle, full lifestyle of Islam. So some of them may choose, for example, to drink alcohol. Some may choose to engage in, fornication, extra, marital affairs, just like, Sheikh Suhail was saying. Some may choose even not to do any of the rituals of Islam. Some may choose not to pray and not to fast. But the key here, though, is they still identify as Muslims. Okay, now this group, even though they break my heart, but I just want to remind you, just like Sheikh Suhail was talking about the guy during the Prophet's time, who was constantly drinking all the time. And they actually would do the had on him, the had for drinking. They did it multiple times on him. So this guy was drinking at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, right? He was still within the fold. So please, this category of youth or young people or even older people, okay, because there are older people also who do not connect with Islam. So this category, they are still within the fold of Islam, and what is keeping them in Islam is their identification that they are Muslims. And please do not underestimate that. And please do not tell them to their face, oh, no, you're not Muslim because you're not praying. Oh, you're not Muslim because you're not doing da-da-da. Or you're not Muslim because you're drinking. Please, let's refrain from that. We are living in such difficult times right now. So for people to stand up and say, we are Muslims in this era we're living in right now is really, really a big deal. Really. So that's the first category of disconnection with Islam. We come to the second one. The second group of disconnection with Islam are anyone, individual, who publicly, and I'm emphasizing publicly here, publicly denounces their affiliation with Islam. And what I mean by publicly is not necessarily that they go on social media and they say, put a post, yesterday I was Muslim, today I'm not a Muslim anymore. Even though some people do that. But what I mean by public is that it's no longer between them and Allah. They have shared this particular piece of information about disconnecting from Islam and saying it, and adamantly saying, I am no longer a Muslim, whether to a friend or to a family member or social media. So I am concerned maybe more about this last group, the group that is publicly renouncing Islam, okay? And this is the one I'm going to be talking about right now, mostly. I'm going to talk about this particular group. So are you with me? You followed my structure so far? Okay, and you remember, I'm reminding you of the context. This is not like, the whole majority of Muslims doing this. Okay, so let's begin by, I'm going to share with you some thoughts about this particular phenomenon, which is the public renunciation of Islam. Number one, I actually want to remind you that it is part of Allah's qadar for us as a community and as an ummah. Sometimes, when we complain about issues, we forget the sixth pillar of Iman, which is the belief in qadar, which is the belief that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decrees certain things. And some of these things are actually, for us, they seem very, very evil, but they are part of Allah's plan. And interestingly enough, let's see if this is, I don't remember what, yeah, okay. In Surah Maryam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins the surah by talking about, and I'm going to just enumerate them. He talks about different prophets in the surah. So he begins with talking about Zakaria, then Yahya, then Isa, then Ibrahim, then Ishaq, and Yaqub, Musa, Harun, Ismail, Idris, Adam, and Nuh. So he speaks about all of these prophets, and the ayah immediately after he's done talking about these prophets is the following. Those were unto whom Allah bestowed His grace from among the prophets, of the offspring of Adam and of those whom we carried with Nuh, and of the offspring of Ibrahim and Israel, and from among those whom we have guided and chose. When the verses of Ar-Rahman recited unto them, they fell down prostrating and weeping. Beautiful ayah in Arabic. I mean, really, translations do not do any justice to the poetic Arabic language. What comes after this one? Immediately, and whenever I read this ayah, I'm like, oh Allah, subhanallah. I mean, you're just showing us your sunnah in social communities. So the ayah after that, immediately after that goes, then another generation followed them, who did not maintain their prayers and have followed lusts. those will face dire consequences. Think about it. Allah is telling us that things go in waves and things go in generations. There will be generations that will be, mashallah, marked by piety and righteousness. And there will be trends when you're going to go through generations that are not connected to your faith. After this ayah, what do we get? Except those who repent and believe and work righteousness, they will enter paradise and they will not lose any of their good deeds. There's always hope in the Quran. There's always hope in the Quran. So my first thought is to remind you that this is part of Allah's qadr. Doesn't mean we're going to be passive, okay? So some people take the belief in qadr as we are going to be passive. We're just going to accept it and be patient. No, we're going to talk about action in a little bit. But it is part of Allah's qadr. The second idea I want to propose to you, that this trend right now, this idea of disconnecting with Islam is a global trend right now. It's not only specific to the US. Go to any of the Muslim countries and that's what you're going to hear from people who are in the Muslim countries. I've recently visited Egypt and I recently visited Saudi Arabia. Even in Saudi Arabia, the cradle of Islam, I hear about people who are disconnecting from Islam. So this is a global trend. So for all of us American Muslims, not to feel, oh, woe to us, we brought our children here to the US. What have we done? Okay, we've ruined them. It's a wave we're going through. We need to be standing firm and we need to take action. My third thought for you is that I think this trend is also impacted by social media. Why? Not because I'm against social media. I love social media. It has its benefit. But social media, what it has done is that it has allowed the non-conforming ideas of any community to actually spread and become mainstream. Okay? Whatever was private before now is very public and it's exposed and everybody knows about it and people are picking it up. Another thing with social media, there is a shift in how things are being done. So before we had the social media culture, people used to be private. I got this message from on WhatsApp, and I thought it's actually applicable to what we're talking about today. So it says, the irony of life. Remember those days when people used to write diaries and got mad when someone read them? Now they put everything on Facebook and they get mad when people don't read them. It's the shift. It's a shift. It's a shift in norms. So we're moving from, we moved actually, it's not we're moving. We moved from a norm, social norm that kind of protected privacy at different levels, and we're moving to the social norm where no public announcements are actually the norm. And when you talk to the young people, the key word that they are using right now, I'm sure some of you have heard it, is I need to be authentic. It's kind of like funny for me, okay? I need to be authentic. That's why I'm going to let everyone know what's going on with me. Even if it's a private matter, they have to know about it. On the other hand, we also have the lack of authenticity of all those pictures on, social media. So it's kind of like, iffy. Anyway, so let's go ahead and we're going to talk and kind of like about, so how big is this problem in the Muslim community? As I told you, I think it is in the minority. It's not a majority problem, but we actually have some research done by the Pew Research Center, and this was done in 2017. Pew Research Center is concerned about, religion in America, so they do lovely, lovely, lovely studies. And they don't only study Muslims, of course, they study Christians and Jews and Hindus, everybody within the US. Anyway, so I'm going to share with you a study, and this is the title of the study for anyone who would like to read it in detail. It's titled, The Share of Americans Who Leave Islam is offset by those who become Muslims. So as a community, we're not necessarily losing people because, those who are leaving are compensated by those who actually convert into Islam. SubhanAllah. And yeah, okay. This was published January 26, 2018. So we're going to look at some of the data from that. So they say 24% of those who are raised Muslims, at some point, they renounce their association with Islam. 24, for me, definitely is a large number, but still it's not the majority. I also want to highlight that not this particular range, 24, 23, is also across the board in other religious groups. So, for example, Christians, they have the same problem like us. They also have about 23% of their people who are raised Christians, they also lose or renounce their association or affiliation with Christianity. Now, for the Christians, the number of people who convert into Christianity is actually way less than the number of people who convert into Islam. Now, I'm going to take the 24% of those people who were raised Muslims and renounced Islam, and we're going to break it down into, they actually asked them, what are the reasons for you leaving Islam? So we're going to look at the breakdown. Of the 24%, 55%, they move into losing any connection with any religion. So that either they become atheists, agnostics, or just no religion, whatever, or no interest in any organized religion. 22% become Christians, and 21% identify with something else. Now, this is the breakdown of what are the reasons for them leaving Islam. And I'm actually going to break down this even further for you. So the 25%, they have issues with religion in general, meaning they're rejecting just having any religion. 19%, they have issues with Islam, and we're going to find out what they are in a minute. 16%, they have a preference for other religions or spirituality. 14%, they left Islam because of their own personal growth, and you will be very sad when you see the list under that one. 2% family reasons, 13% other reason or unclear, and 12% did not answer that question of why did you leave Islam. Moving on. The 25% who have issues with the religion in general were divided into 12% who do not like organized religion, 8% don't believe in God, 5% are not religious, not practicing, or drifted away. Okay, I'm not too concerned about this because, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us with the choice to believe or not to believe. So this, this I see it as part of that divine decree that every human being has a choice. I have an issue with the rest that's coming. 19% of those who left Islam said they had issues with Islam. 9% they don't believe or they never really connected with Islam. 7% they don't like or agree with the teachings of Islam. And 3%, I know it's small, but still, 3% terrorism and fanaticism. I was reading in an older Time magazine today, and they had a small blurb that they discovered in Iraq 200 mass graves, which totals about thousands of people who were, buried in these mass graves, and they were basically killed by ISIS. We're talking thousands of people. This is Muslims killing Muslims. And when our youth, just like Sheikh Suhail was saying that we need to talk to our youth. If someone is leaving Islam because of terrorism and fanaticism, this is a person who really did not understand that Islam does not command and accept these acts. Okay, 16% who had a preference for other religions, 9% prefer the teachings of other religions, 6%, this is in the general US society, this is now becoming widespread, the idea that I am open to all religions, I just need to be a good person. I do not need to worry about any organized religion. And 1% are still searching. Now, look at the 14% that left Islam because of personal growth. 6% said, I left Islam because I became more educated. 5% said, because I grew up, matured, because of my life experiences. We don't know, Taban, what that life experiences mean. And 3% said, personal, non-specific, but I just left Islam. This one breaks my heart. Really breaks my heart. Instead of, like, for me in college, I'm a zoology major. For me in college, looking under the microscope at all these bacteria and viruses and, all these lovely creatures of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was an affirmation of my belief with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it saddens me that someone is saying, because I became more educated, and of course we don't know what they mean by more education. It could be that they took a philosophy class, for example, in college, and then somebody put seeds of doubt in their head about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the creation. Moving on. Okay, so I shared with you the study just so you will understand what's going on with these individuals who are leaving Islam. What's going on with them? It's very important to understand what's going on with them so we can actually help them, support them, and be there for them. Now, when someone tells me that they have left Islam because of Muslims, I usually attribute it to the discouraging practices that are happening within the Muslim community. So I have a list for you for these discouraging practices that I see in my office. It's just a list. It's not exclusive. I'm sure there's more, but this is what I remembered. Number 1, shaming. What do I mean by shaming? Shaming is a practice that actually begins very early in life. I have, alhamdulillah, mashallah, alhamdulillah, Allah has blessed me with 4 grandchildren. So they're all under the age of 3. Good? I was shocked and saddened and upset and angry that one of my grandchildren who went to school started saying that he would mention his name and then he'd say, is naughty. We don't say this in our house. This is not something I do, my children do, my parents do. We do not do this in our house. Unfortunately, the school they went to was a Muslim school. Unfortunately. I wish I could tell you it wasn't a Muslim school. It was a Muslim school. So imagine for this child who really is not yet 2, is barely speaking, and he is beginning to tell us his name is naughty. This is shaming. This is shaming. In psychology, we differentiate between shaming and guilt. So let me, and this is the work of Brené Brown out of Texas. She has done marvelous, marvelous work. Shaming is basically a global sense of the person. Like when the person tells you, like my grandson is saying, I am naughty, this is shaming. Okay? Because it becomes a global character. Okay? It's not, okay, I spilled the milk and I wasn't careful. There's a huge difference between I spilled the milk and I wasn't careful and saying I am naughty. I am naughty, I'm not good, I am bad. So when does the shaming begin? It begins with young children, and I gave you a very real example here because we are trying to now counteract this I am naughty with my grandchild and start saying, no, okay, no, you just did this, this is what you're gonna do. So it starts very early, and it is usually related to mistakes. It is usually related to not fulfilling somebody's expectation. So it could be, of course, the most important adults in any child's life is basically who? Parents and teachers. So this shaming business is unfortunately prevalent. I see it in my office with my individual clients who are coming to deal with issues in life, general issues in life. And some of them struggle with this shaming business. They're not good. And the worst one is when adults in the children's life connect the child's behavior to, you're not being a good Muslim. That's why anyone who took my class knows, please, I say, please avoid the use of good and bad Muslims. Let's avoid these adjectives, okay? Let's focus on, describing the behavior and how we can fix the behavior and how we can improve it. We do not want our children to leave childhood with an internalized, integrated, entrenched sense that they are not worthy for whatever reason. That any mistake they make means that they are definitely horrible. So shaming is a big deal in our community. And when shaming becomes connected to Islam, you can understand quickly how it is very easy for someone to decide to leave Islam. Because then it becomes for them an issue of, I'm either going to take care of myself, or I just have to keep fighting these Muslims around me who keep saying, that I'm not good enough, I'm not a good Muslim, and so on. Next one, hellfire. What do I mean by hellfire? Belief in hellfire is a core component of our Islamic tradition, but it is not the central component of our Islamic tradition. The central component of our Islamic belief system is our connection with Allah. Connection with Allah, with all of His magnificent attributes. Okay? We, sometimes with children, what we do, we focus on the hellfire. And there are many children who are told, if you lie, you're going to go to the hellfire. If you don't listen to me, and this is coming, the parent card. This is also common in our community, the parent card, which means if you actually don't obey me, if you don't listen to me, you're going to the hellfire. Allah is going to be angry with you. Because we take the verses in the Quran, the very beautiful verses in the Quran about how children need to respect their parents, we take them to an extreme that wasn't intended. The verses in the Quran about respecting one's parents do not necessarily mean that when the children become adults, that they have to listen to their parents in everything. And I know some of you are going, no, how could you say that? It's true. So, hellfire, focusing that everything in Islam revolves around the hellfire, and the parent card associating Allah's wrath with whether the parents are happy or not happy. This causes a lot of emotional and psychological struggles for people who actually want to connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The number 4 is helicopter parenting. What do I mean by that? Parents who, because they love their children so much and they don't want them to actually do any mistakes, then they go into control mode. And they suffocate their children and they spy on them. Remember that spying in Islam is not accepted. If you're worried about your children for any reason, I need you to be transparent with your children. Tell them, okay, I'm worried. Let's say I have someone, for example, who came to me. She's suspecting that her son is using marijuana, which is another common thing that we're experiencing right now. So she wants to monitor if this marijuana business is happening or not. I said, okay, you can monitor, but please let your son know that you are going to be searching his bag and you are going to be searching his room. And when you find anything related to marijuana, it's going to go in the trash. That's how we handle it. You don't go spy behind their back and then you come to them and say, is there anything you want to tell me? Of course, they're going to tell you no. Because first of all, they don't know what you're talking about. And then after they don't say anything, you say, you're lying to me. We put ourselves in that cycle. And when we do this, you know what? We lose the trust of our children. We need to be transparent. When you are transparent with your children, they will trust you. They're not going to like you. when you're searching their room and searching whatever, they're not going to like that. They're not going to love. They're going to be upset with you. But I would prefer that they're upset with you, but they respect you. They respect you, respect your word, and they respect what you do with them. So, culture versus religion, I'm sure you all understand what I mean by that. When we bring culture, whatever culture we have, and we tell the children, this is Islam. I don't need to go into explaining that. Prosperity gospel. Okay, this is interesting. Among our Christian brothers and sisters, there is a group right now that preaches what is called prosperity gospel. What does this mean? It means these are churches that are emphasizing that you need to just, obey God and pray to God, and you will get everything that you want in your life. God will give you, in return for your obedience and for your, prayers, He will give you everything that you. This is an actual phenomenon. Now, I thought this was unique to the Christian brothers and sisters until I got a few young adults in my office who were quoting Ayah 97 in Surah Al-Nahl, which I think is Surah 16. And in the ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about those who are believers and they do good, Allah will grant them a good life. Hayatan tayyiba. I actually had a young man in my office telling me, how come I don't have a hayatan tayyiba? When I have been obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and doing everything, He's not giving me what I want. This is called prosperity gospel. And this is because, again, of ignorance of actual Islam. In Islam, we do not hold this belief that you just obey and you just ask Allah and Allah is going to give you everything you want. We know, on the contrary, sometimes He's not going to give you what you want. And that's going to be good for you. Hayatan tayyiba, I like to think about the definition of hayatan tayyiba in this ayah in particular, is the state of the believer who is content with as-sara' wad-dara'. The state of the believer who is content whether life is going well or it's not going well. To me, that is hayatan tayyiba. Why? Because you have this inner peace and inner contentment within you. So, racism, I don't need to explain that. Sexism, I'm sure you've all heard about the girls complaining about the double standards of treating them in our community, whether in our community spaces or within the family. Poor modeling from the parents. Unfortunately, sometimes we have children who decide that, I just hate Islam because of the way, my parents deal with me. And then the last one is, which Sheikh Suhail touched upon, is parents who are not actually encouraging open conversations about anything. So when children come to them and they are experiencing doubts, they're not open to have these conversations without panicking, and with patience and with compassion and without judgment also. Okay, how much time do I have, Habibti? Sorry. Just 5 more minutes. Okay. So very quickly, I think explained, the problem around the disconnection from Islam, and I'm talking about the category that is losing their identification with Islam. So what are we going to do? Number 1 is not to do the discouraging practices. Okay, that's number 1. So I've eliminated these, I hope, for you. Number 2, to begin early with our children. So in our book, Munira and I, we have segments in the book that covers actually different age groups. At the end of every section that talks about a specific age group, we have a list about what can you do in terms of nurturing Islam within your home. So we're inviting you to maybe read and implement some of the ideas in this list. The idea here, the main idea is to stop focusing on Islam as a system of rules that children just need to obey, and move towards nurturing the connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you ask me, so how do we do that? Some of you may know the hadith of Jibreel alayhi salam when he came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he asked him, what is Islam? And he answered and he gave him the 5 pillars of Islam. You all know them, right? And then he asked them, what is Iman? And then he gave him the 6 pillars of Iman. You know that? And then the last question was about what is Ihsan. So my invitation is, I think we focus so much on the pillars of Islam, and we actually forget about implementing Iman in the life of our children. So in addition to the pillars of Iman, which are the belief of Allah in Allah and the angels and and the books and the prophets and al-qada wal-qadar, and believing in the decrees of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in creation. In addition to that, there is a hadith from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that talks about Iman, and he says Iman is about 73, right? 73 or 72 شعبة. بضع وسبعون بضع. Okay, so Iman is 70 plus. Okay, what shall I call it? شعبة. Branches. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so 70 plus branches. The highest of that is La ilaha illallah, the belief in that there is no God except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what is the lowest, or maybe I don't know how I would define it. The last one of the branches is to remove, something that harms people from the ground. Between La ilaha illallah and removing something from the ground that harms people, there are so many branches of Iman. Unfortunately, we do not teach those to our children. In those branches, there is tawakkul ala Allah. We all need to do tawakkul ala Allah. And I just want to warn you, because we live in the US, we really think we're powerful. We really think we are in control. Why? Because we have systems that takes care of everything for you. You really don't feel that you need Allah on a daily basis unless you have a crisis. People who live in poor countries, they are exposed to the need to Allah on a daily basis. We're not exposed to that need until we have a crisis. So please, we need to start teaching our children the branches of Iman, not only prayer and fasting. We need to nurture within their hearts love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Also, I want to emphasize that we need to be careful about the messages we are sending to our children unconsciously. So, for example, something horrific happens in your family, and your first reaction is, oh my God, how could this happen to me? How could Allah do this to me? Oh, no. Okay, what is your child learning from that? Complain and whine? I want you to compare that to someone who is exposed to something in their life, it's really bad, and they go, La ilaha illallah, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. So our messages that come unconsciously in our daily lives are also very important in whether we are going to establish that connection with Allah. But most importantly is to focus on Allah the loving. Because Allah is loving. Allah is merciful. To make sure we're talking about Allah who forgives the sins, that we always, like I showed you in the ayah, there is always hope. As long as there is a breath within us, there is always hope to reconnect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the thing I did not cover, I'm so sorry, is what to do when our children actually renounce Islam. So very quickly, it goes along with what Sheikh Suhail was talking about, is focus on maintaining the relationship with your children. Do not think of severing your relationship with your children if they publicly renounce Islam unless you have to. And that is a case-by-case situation. I cannot give you a list of what you can do, because the situations are very complex and very nuanced. Sorry. So it's very hard for me to give you a list of what you can do. Okay. Do you have a minute to share a story? A minute? Okay. So I have a client whose son is in college, and he approached his parents, and he told them that he is not a Muslim anymore. Of course, they panicked and they didn't know what to do, and so on. And so, mashallah, they sought help from different shuyukh, and they contacted me, and so we started talking and counseling. And I recommended that they actually don't cut off any relations with him, but at the same time, they need to be very clear about what they think and how they feel about his decision, and not to manipulate him, and not to really put him down all the time, but just so he knows. It can be a one-time conversation. The children, they don't need us to repeat ourselves. They really hear us from the first time, okay? So I said, you only have this one conversation with him, explaining your position, explaining what you think and how you feel, and then you start dealing with him normally. So the interesting thing, he was gonna come for Ramadan. And so they were struggling with what are we gonna do in Ramadan, and then he told them that he wanted to actually pray Taraweeh with his friend. And so the mother's first reaction was, no, you can't pray Taraweeh. You're not a Muslim anymore. And then, we kind of like had a session and so on. And she is so, mashallah, she likes things to be authentic. And she's talking to me, okay, what about the intention? He's not praying for Allah. I said, Habibti, I understand. But maybe, you never know, maybe he's going to hear an ayah during Taraweeh that's going to change his heart. And so that's one thing, is if they are going down that path, we're not going to lecture them, but we're just going to allow for normal exposure to the community. And that's why the community needs to be compassionate, non-judgmental, welcoming, and loving, so all of us Muslims who are struggling can feel that we have a community behind us. And may Allah bless you all.